I was living with my brother, a former Marine. He was K Company, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines, and he fought in Vietnam.
There are some voices you hear once and immediately remember. You may forget the face of the actor. You may forget the name of the show. But the voice stays somewhere inside you. For millions of people around the world, Peter Cullen had exactly that kind of voice. It was deep, powerful, calm, and somehow comforting at the same time. For more than 4 decades, that voice became connected to one of the most recognizable heroes in pop culture, Optimus Prime. And now, that voice has gone silent. Peter Cullen, the legendary actor who brought Optimus Prime to life and also gave a completely different kind of emotion to Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh, has died at the age of 85. Cullen passed away on August 26, 2026, at his home in Los Angeles, surrounded by his family. His cause of death has not been publicly disclosed. His family described his passing as peaceful and asked fans to honor his legacy by living with compassion, integrity, and loyalty. But here is the part that makes this loss feel so much bigger than the death of a voice actor. Peter Cullen did not simply perform characters. He helped create memories for several generations. Children who watched Transformers in the 1980s eventually grew into adults. Some introduced Optimus Prime to their own children. Others heard Cullen's voice again decades later when the Transformers movies returned to theaters. And through all those years, that unmistakable voice remained. Today, when fans say goodbye to Peter Cullen, they're not simply saying goodbye to an actor. They are saying goodbye to a voice that was part of their childhood, their imagination, and in many cases, their entire lives. What makes Peter Cullen's story even more remarkable is that Optimus Prime was not supposed to sound like the loudest or most aggressive hero in the room. Cullen found something deeper. When he was preparing for the role, he drew inspiration from his older brother Larry, a Vietnam War veteran and former U.S. Marine captain. Larry gave him advice that would eventually become central to the character. Optimus Prime should be strong without being cruel. He should have authority without needing to scream. Cullen later explained that his brother's idea was to make the character strong enough to be gentle. That thought became the emotional foundation of the voice that fans would eventually recognize around the world. Think about how unusual that is. A character who transforms into a massive truck could have been played as nothing more than a giant, aggressive machine. Instead, Cullen gave Optimus Prime dignity. He gave him patience. He gave him sadness when things went wrong and courage when others were afraid. That combination is one reason the character lasted. People did not simply hear a robot. They heard a leader. And that leadership came from Cullen's understanding that real strength does not always need to be loud. It can be calm. It can be patient. It can protect others without demanding praise. In many ways, Peter Cullen's own voice became inseparable from the values people associated with Optimus Prime. His family echoed those same ideas after his death, asking fans to remember compassion, integrity, and loyalty. But before Peter Cullen became Optimus Prime, there was a much longer story. He was born on July 28, 1941, in Montreal, Canada, and his career did not begin with giant robots or blockbuster movies. He studied drama at Canada's National Theatre School and began working in radio and television. During the 1960s and 1970s, he appeared in and worked on a number of television programs, including the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour and the Sonny Cher Comedy Hour. He was building experience long before most people knew his name. This part of his career is important because it shows that Peter Cullen was never simply a person who got lucky with one famous role. He spent years learning how to control his voice, understand timing, create characters, and communicate emotion. Voice acting may look simple from the outside. The actor sits in a studio, speaks into a microphone, and the audience never sees the performance. But that can actually make the job harder. There are no facial expressions to help communicate emotion. There is no costume. There is no physical movement for the audience to watch. Everything has to come through sound. Peter Cullen understood that better than most. His voice could make a character sound enormous, vulnerable, funny, exhausted, or heroic. That range would eventually make him one of the most respected voice performers of his generation. Then came the role that changed everything. In 1984, Transformers arrived on television, and Peter Cullen became the original English voice of Optimus Prime. The character was the leader of the Autobots, and Cullen's performance immediately gave him a personality that went far beyond the basic idea of a transforming robot. Optimus Prime sounded like someone you could trust. He sounded experienced. He sounded like someone who had seen terrible things but still believed that doing the right thing mattered. That quality became especially important because children were not simply watching battles between machines. They were watching a story about loyalty, sacrifice, friendship, and responsibility. Cullen's voice gave those ideas weight. The original animated series ran during the 1980s, but the character's popularity never truly disappeared. The Transformers brand continued through toys, comics, television shows, video games, and eventually massive Hollywood films. And every time Cullen returned, fans recognized him almost immediately. And then came one of the most emotional moments in Transformers history. In the 1986 animated movie, Optimus Prime's death shocked an entire generation of young viewers. The scene became one of the most remembered moments in the franchise. It showed just how emotionally connected audiences had become to a character who technically did not have a human face. Peter Cullen's performance helped make that possible. His voice had made Optimus Prime feel alive. So when Optimus was gone, it felt like more than a fictional character disappearing. It felt like losing a hero. That is one reason Cullen's return to the role mattered so much to fans. Decades later, when Hollywood brought Transformers back to the big screen, Cullen returned as Optimus Prime. Starting with the 2007 live-action movie, he once again delivered that familiar voice to a new generation. He continued reprising the character in later films and other Transformers projects, including 2023's Rise of the Beasts. And that is where the story becomes almost unbelievable. The same actor who voiced Optimus Prime for children in the 1980s was still voicing the character for audiences decades later. Generations changed, technology changed, filmmaking changed, but that voice remained remarkably recognizable. If you only know Peter Cullen as Optimus Prime, you actually know only one part of his career. Because while Optimus became his most famous role, Cullen had an extraordinary ability to disappear completely inside different characters. One of the best examples was Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. The difference between Optimus Prime and Eeyore could hardly be greater. Optimus was powerful, confident, and commanding. Eeyore was tired, gloomy, and constantly expecting something to go wrong. Yet Peter Cullen made both characters instantly believable. His Eeyore voice became one of the most recognizable performances in the Winnie the Pooh world, and Cullen continued playing the character across various television productions, specials, films, and games. For many fans, Eeyore was actually their first introduction to Cullen's work. They may not have known his name at the time. They may not have known that the same actor was also Optimus Prime. They simply heard that sad, slow voice and understood exactly who Eeyore was. That is the mark of a great voice actor. You do not hear the performer trying to create a character. You hear the character itself. But Cullen's range went even further. He voiced KARR, the dangerous artificial intelligence from Knight Rider, and he contributed vocal effects to the creature in the 1987 film Predator. He also worked on animated projects including The Smurfs, G.I. Joe, DuckTales, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, Voltron, Heathcliff, Muppet Babies, Spider-Man, Scooby-Doo, and many others. One particularly fascinating part of his Predator work was the strange clicking sound associated with the creature. Cullen reportedly created the effect himself, giving the alien hunter one of the most unsettling sounds in movie history. Think about the difference between those performances. In one corner, you have Optimus Prime, a symbol of courage. In another, Eeyore, a symbol of sadness and quiet humor. Then you have KARR, a threatening machine, and Predator, an almost completely non-human creature. Peter Cullen could move between these worlds because he understood that voice acting was not about simply changing the pitch of his voice. It was about finding the personality inside the character. And there was something else that made Cullen special. He understood that silence and restraint could sometimes be more powerful than shouting. That quality became especially important in Optimus Prime. A weaker performance might have turned the character into a simple action hero who constantly yelled orders. Cullen did something different. He allowed pauses. He gave certain words extra weight. He made Optimus sound like someone who thought before speaking. That is probably one reason the character continued to feel relevant as audiences changed. Children could hear a hero. Adults could hear something deeper. They could hear responsibility. They could hear a leader who understood that every decision could have consequences. Cullen's inspiration from his brother Larry helped create that balance. Larry's military background gave Cullen a real-world example of leadership that was not based on anger or ego. Cullen even shared part of his Optimus Prime earnings with his brother until Larry's death in 2011. a personal detail that shows how meaningful that connection was to him. That relationship between the two brothers adds another emotional layer to the story. When fans hear Optimus Prime speaking about courage and protecting others, they are hearing a performance inspired by a real person Peter Cullen deeply respected. His brother's advice helped shape one of the most famous voices in animation. In a strange way, Larry's influence continued through every Optimus Prime performance that followed. The character became larger than either brother could have imagined. Children around the world learned his voice. Adults remembered it decades later. And Peter Cullen never forgot where that voice came from. That makes the loss of Cullen feel even more personal. His most famous character was fictional, but the inspiration behind that character was real. It came from family, memory, and respect. Over the years, Cullen also became known for the way he interacted with fans. Voice actors often have a unique relationship with audiences because people may know their characters without recognizing their faces. Cullen understood that. At conventions and public appearances, fans would approach him carrying old toys, DVDs, posters, and childhood memories. For some people, meeting Peter Cullen was not simply meeting a celebrity. It was meeting the voice that had been part of their childhood. And that emotional connection went both ways. Cullen understood what Optimus Prime meant to people. He knew that fans were not only interested in the technical side of his performance. They were attached to memories. They remembered watching Transformers with parents or siblings. They remembered playing with toys. They remembered hearing Optimus speak during moments when they were young and believed heroes could solve impossible problems. Cullen became the human connection behind those memories. His career eventually received major recognition. In 2011, he received a Daytime Emmy nomination for his work in an animated program, and in 2023 he received a Lifetime Achievement honor at the Children's and Family Emmy Awards. Those honors were important, but perhaps the biggest proof of his impact came from something much simpler. People kept asking him to be Optimus Prime. When the live-action Transformers movies arrived, director Michael Bay brought Cullen back. Cullen later compared returning to the character to putting on an old pair of comfortable shoes. That description says a lot. After so many years, he did not have to reinvent Optimus Prime. He already knew him. The voice was part of him. And even late in life, Cullen continued working. His credits extended into recent years, with his final listed role reported as Thetis in the third season of Invincible. That means Peter Cullen's career was not simply a story about looking backward. He remained active in the industry and continued lending his voice to new projects while older fans continued discovering his earlier work. His career connected multiple generations in a way very few performers ever manage. Now comes the hardest part of this story. Peter Cullen is no longer here to record another Optimus Prime speech. He is no longer here to walk into a convention and hear fans tell him what his work meant to them. He is no longer here to surprise another generation with that unmistakable voice. According to his family and representatives, Cullen died peacefully at his Los Angeles home on August 26th, surrounded by his loved ones. He was 85. His family has not announced a cause of death. And perhaps there is something fitting about the fact that his final moments were described as peaceful and surrounded by family. Peter Cullen spent so much of his professional life giving voices to characters who represented strength, loyalty, courage, and compassion. His family is now asking fans to remember him through those same values. The statement released after his death did not focus on fame or money or awards. Instead, his family asked people to honor his legacy by serving their communities and leading others with compassion, integrity, and loyalty. They also repeated the words that had become so closely connected to the way Cullen understood Optimus Prime: be strong enough to be gentle. Those words now feel different. For decades, they were associated with a fictional robot leader. Today, they can also be understood as part of Peter Cullen's own legacy. He did not simply give Optimus Prime a voice. He helped define what that voice represented: strength without cruelty, leadership without arrogance, courage without hatred. Those ideas are part of why Optimus Prime became more than another cartoon character. And perhaps the most heartbreaking thing is that Peter Cullen's voice will continue to exist even though he is gone. Somewhere tonight, someone will press play on an old Transformers episode. Someone will watch the 1986 animated movie. Someone will put on a live-action Transformers film. Somewhere, a child who was not even born when the original series aired will hear that deep voice for the first time. And somewhere else, an adult who grew up with Transformers will suddenly feel like a child again. That is the strange power of voice acting. The performer disappears, but the performance remains. Peter Cullen may be gone, but Optimus Prime can still speak. For fans of Winnie the Pooh, the same thing is true of Eeyore. Someone will hear that familiar voice and remember a character who was sad, funny, honest, and strangely comforting. Eeyore never sounded like Optimus Prime, but both characters carried something human inside them. That was Cullen's gift. He could make a machine feel like a leader and make a cartoon donkey feel like someone you understood. He could create emotion without showing his face. That is why his work reached so many people. There is also something deeply moving about how long his career lasted. Peter Cullen began working in entertainment decades before many of his biggest fans were born. He worked in radio and television in the 1960s. He became Optimus Prime in the 1980s. He continued voicing the character in major Hollywood movies beginning in 2007. He returned again in later Transformers projects. Few performers get the chance to remain connected to the same character across such a huge part of popular culture. Cullen did. And he did it without losing the qualities that made the original performance special. Maybe that is why fans are grieving so strongly today. When a performer dies, we often say that their work will live on. But in Peter Cullen's case, that phrase has a very literal meaning. His voice is recorded. His performances are preserved. His characters remain available to millions of people. Future generations will continue watching Transformers without ever having the opportunity to meet the man behind Optimus Prime. They will simply hear the voice and understand why it mattered. Peter Cullen also leaves behind his children, Angus, Claire, Pilar, and Clay. For them, the loss is obviously much more personal than it is for fans. The world knew Peter Cullen as Optimus Prime, Eeyore, and one of the great voice actors of his generation. His family knew him as a father. That distinction matters. Behind the legendary voice was a real man with a private life, family, memories, and relationships that existed away from microphones and cameras. And maybe the best way to remember him is not simply by repeating the roles he played, but by remembering what those roles made people feel. Optimus Prime made generations believe that strength could be honorable. Eeyore reminded people that sadness could exist alongside humor and friendship. Cullen's other characters showed just how wide his range truly was. His career demonstrated that a performer does not always need to be seen to become unforgettable. So tonight, millions of fans will remember Peter Cullen in different ways. Some will remember Optimus Prime standing against impossible odds. Some will remember Eeyore speaking in that tired, unforgettable voice. Some will remember the strange sounds of Predator. Others will remember meeting Cullen at a convention and hearing him speak directly to them. And some will simply remember being a child, sitting in front of a television, listening to a voice that made a fictional world feel real. Peter Cullen spent more than 6 decades entertaining audiences. He gave a voice to heroes, villains, animals, machines, monsters, and characters that people carried with them long after the credits ended. But perhaps his greatest legacy is not one specific character. It is the emotional connection he created between a voice and a generation. Peter Cullen has passed away at 85. The cause of death remains undisclosed, and his family has asked fans to remember him through compassion, integrity, loyalty, and gentleness. So rest in peace, Peter Cullen. Thank you for giving Optimus Prime a voice. Thank you for giving Eeyore a heart. And thank you for reminding millions of people that sometimes the strongest voice in the room is the one that knows how to be gentle. Your voice may be gone, but it will never be forgotten. Thanks for watching. We will see you in the next story.